And welcome to the AI Business Leadership Podcast, where we speak to business leaders about all things artificial intelligence. I'm your host, Laura Nelson, Head of Product at SolvedB.Ai. And today's guest is John Julia, Senior Vice President of Sales at Pinnacle AI. Hello, John.
Hey, Laura, thank you. And by the way, Laura, thank you for inviting me to your podcast. We really appreciate it.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's great to have you with us. So John is a seasoned businessman with over 35 years of experience, including founding, growing and selling startups, leading sales in telecom and IT companies like Verizon. And he now serves as Senior VP of Sales for Pinnacle AI, which is a company which helps customers to optimize their cloud spending while building modern, scalable applications to meet their business needs. So today we're going to hear about John's journey into leadership, and we're also going to talk about how businesses and organizations can best use artificial intelligence technology to support their tech stack, to control their cloud costs, and to optimize their technical infrastructure. So thanks very much, John, for joining us today. Could you just share with our listeners, please, a little bit more about your background and what's brought you to your current position at Pinnacle AI?
Absolutely, Laura. So I've been in the technology field for probably the better part of 25 years. And that's kind of spanned across working for small companies, working for big companies. A good majority of that time has been spent in sales leadership roles, supporting teams that cover global Fortune 500 companies in nature. But again, my experience does span across SMB market, mid-market as well. So typically when you're working, again, a lot of my time has been spent in the larger world of providers. It's been kind of spent solution selling, selling up and down the entire stack. So from the perspective of artificial intelligence, done a lot of work, history in automation, in obviously cloud, needless to say. Had a lot of experience prior to joining Pinnacle AI in that world of, again, analytics, so forth like that. So when we're talking about artificial intelligence and machine learning, really that's what we're really talking about, a modernized automation, and not that much different in some respects from RPA or OCR, just different technologies that take that automation to a new level. So when I received a call about Pinnacle AI and some folks that I've worked with in the past to join, certainly they were doing some very interesting things. And when we look at artificial intelligence, certainly over the next 5 to 10 years, it's really kind of the space that I wanted to be in. Next evolution of obviously IT and technology. So here I am with Pinnacle AI at this point.
So your first venture into the world of artificial intelligence, then, that was led by some data scientists that contacted you?
That is correct. I had worked with a bunch of folks going back some time for a company called CenturyLink. These folks kind of worked in our cloud practice, developed a lot of the CenturyLink cloud, as well as the partnerships with Google and AWS and Azure. A couple of folks went off to work at AWS after their tenure at Lumen, particularly working in the AI/ML space. And that's where they got essentially the idea about using, again, artificial intelligence and machine learning to modernize cloud infrastructure, because they got to see the hyperscalers from the inside out. And that's where they started building some of the foundation models that we're using today, that we've eventually went GA with and released our product called Cost Optimization and Modernization. Received a call. Love what they were doing, had worked with them in the past, and just jumped in with both feet. To just kind of point out, Laura, when we're talking about artificial intelligence, many times it seems like fire was just invented yesterday. Artificial intelligence and machine learning, have been around for a long time, right? Machine learning actually dates back to the 1950s. Now, with regards to artificial intelligence. If you go back 5, 6, 7 years, artificial intelligence was really data science, right? It is the advent of the foundation model. Some of the chip manufacturers, right, being able to produce chips that can process massive amounts of data at affordable prices, no less. The prices have certainly been coming down. So there is a lot of things that have been happening over the past couple of years that have really taken artificial intelligence and made it more mainstream for the average business, right?
Yeah, for sure. And so you're in the business of still helping businesses with their cloud infrastructure and using AI to do so. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure, absolutely. So, Laura, we know that companies started this migration to the cloud decades ago, right? And the cloud uh, very much mirrored what a traditional data center would look like, right? I'd still have to get compute. I still need network. I still need storage. Still need some sort of database. So there was a simplicity about the cloud, especially migrating from a physical data center environment to a virtual environment years ago. But over time, the cloud, the public cloud, whether it be AWS or Azure or Google, has become extremely complex. Extremely complex. The cloud companies inundate you with data and reports. The cloud companies have also innovated and modernized their own infrastructure. AWS has over 200 products and services that they go to market with today. Azure has over 100 products or services, or Microsoft, and you look at Google. Google is approaching that 100 product or service mark themselves. When you think about all of the SaaS providers out there and the APIs now that are built from a cloud environment to third parties, again, that environment has become extremely complex over the years, right? And you can actually make an argument modernizing your cloud environment today is maybe more difficult than migrating to the cloud or migrating to a greenfield environment 10 or 15 years ago, right? So we've developed this platform. We've developed this engine based on AI ML technologies, right? That essentially take the human element out of determining what the right product sets or services that you should be purchasing from your cloud provider based upon number one, what your business requirements are, what your application requirements are from an SLA perspective. And then once the recommendations are made about the right products and services, we built additional features of functionality into the proverbial machine. So that machine will recommend the products and services for optimization, but then it will also make recommendations about the services, not that you're just currently using, how to optimize them, but what products and services that you should be using. And then it creates the visual diagram. It generates the Terraform code, creates the instruction manuals if you have it, or the implementation guidelines, and actually creates a summary from a business perspective of why the technical recommendations that were made by ComAI actually support the business, right, and optimize the business, not just the infrastructure as well. So I've said a lot, right? Cover a lot of ground, but we honestly believe that we've been able to take the subjectivity out of building out your cloud infrastructure. And we can also make determinations about what applications should be running in a data center as opposed to a cloud as well.
It's interesting you mentioned the modernization of cloud infrastructure and how now that's potentially more complicated and more difficult than the original move to the cloud kind of phase, which was obviously huge at the time. There must be a lot of modernizing options and routes that people can go down, and some really huge potential there for businesses in terms of savings and efficiencies.
Absolutely. So when we look at when we look at legacy cloud architecture, again, very similar to the physical data center, right? And I'll take AWS, for example. The most popular product they have, by far, most of their customers are on EC2 environment, which is a server-based infrastructure. However, AWS has, they've really modernized their own compute environment, right? So we see server-based infrastructures really going to serverless-based infrastructures. So products like AWS Lambda, AWS Batch, even AWS Fargate, right, are all products and services that run without the need to pay or reserve those instances or those infrastructures. So when you start looking at your cloud environment, and now you don't have to pay for the compute, you can run the workload and drop those instances as soon as that workload is complete. There is a lot of potential savings. We've actually found that if customers have not modernized their environment within the past 18 to 24 months, you generally can save, right, at a very minimum, 25, 30% off of your total cloud bill.
Well,
But there's another important reason, Laura. We're here talking about artificial intelligence. And when you look at the type of compute or type of infrastructure that you need to run generative AI or artificial intelligence, machine learning types of solutions, you really need an environment that replicates like an ephemeral type of compute, right? Again, that serverless technology where you can just drop the workload, scale very quickly. If you were to run generative AI solutions on those server-based infrastructures and product sets like EC2 and AWS, you'd probably go broke, right, within a couple of months, right, to reserve the amount of compute that you need, the amount of storage that you need, and pay for those assets, those virtual assets, whether you're running them or not, can be a very costly proposition.
so there's a lot of business decisions in that, and in that management of your cloud architecture and your costs and things. How do you make sure that people are able to make informed decisions about their cloud architecture supported by AI in this instance?
Yeah, so that's a great question, right? So, and it's very hard to make an informed decision when you're talking about 200 products and services from
Mm-hmm.
AWS. Even the most seasoned cloud architect, right, would have difficulty knowing the ins and outs of every product and service and which right is one for that organization, and then being able to put those products and services together in a architecture, to your point, is very challenging, right? So when we take our platform, when we take our engine that we've run different types of architectures through over and over and over and over time, the machine starts to learn, right? What architecture, what product and service, not just runs most efficiently from an operations perspective, but also runs most efficiently from a cost perspective. Again, we can put those scenarios into a playground and let the machine determine ultimately what that right architecture is by taking human bias and human emotion out of that mix.
Right, it's very interesting, and I suppose kind of similar on a similar kind of thread. I know we've talked about one of the challenges that I think all companies face when using AI products and services is it's partly that how they're able to make informed decisions and how they're able to have that AI support them in those decisions, but also the need to provide potentially quite commercially or maybe personally sensitive data to those products to allow them to help make those decisions. What would you say are some of your kind of key concerns in that area?
Well, I think when you're about to undertake any large, complex IT initiative, right? Obviously, we're talking about information technology on this podcast, but this certainly can apply to everything. I would say that there are always concerns within the complexities of the solution that you're trying to provision. So when we're talking about AI, there's certainly a couple that I would certainly recommend that companies or organizations do. First of all, understand the problem that you're trying to solve. Like anything else, right? AI is a tool to solve business problems, right? Understand, right? And define before you initiate the project, define what a successful project looks like, right? And have measurable benchmarks along the way. One of the challenges we see a lot of organizations make is that they are expecting artificial intelligence to go from 0 to 60 in a second, right? To solve the world's problems. But we are very early in the stages of artificial intelligence, generative AI development. And the technology is exploding at exponential rates. But the truth of the matter is that generative AI solutions are built to solve a single task, right? We're not at the point where we can give, for the most part, essentially objective-driven commands to the machine, right? Here's a problem, go figure it out. Here's a task, go complete the task. And the tasks that are best tackled by artificial intelligence are generally those tasks, right, that are repetitious in nature, right, requiring a constant output that usually takes a human being, right, hours and hours and hours and hours to do. That tends to be semi-tedious, right? The second concern that I have, or advice that I would have to businesses, is that, right, as I mentioned, artificial intelligence is expanding at exponential speeds, right? It's evolving at exponential speeds. So you have to have a short-term plan. This is the task that I want completed. Understand your ROI, or your total cost of ownership, for an AI-driven solution versus what was currently in place. But while you're developing that short-term plan, start developing a long-term plan as well. And Laura, that's what you alluded to in terms of some of the solutions that are out there today. You want to make sure that you don't end up in a situation of vendor lock, where you end up going with a particular partner or vendor. And as your solution is growing, you realize that that solution can't handle the evolution of where you want to take your project. Right? Well, I'm locked in with my current vendor. My only alternative is to, right, rip everything up and start again. So having a scalable and flexible environment that you're building your AI solutions on is absolutely paramount.
And you mentioned you mentioned a few times how quickly things move in the AI world, in the technology world, and especially the last few years, how quickly things have moved and kind of exploded. So given that really rapid pace of AI development, what advice would you give to businesses and to business leaders looking to make sure that they stay agile, they stay adaptable in their AI strategies, and therefore they're able to remain competitive in such a quickly changing landscape?
Sure, absolutely. So again, I think start small, right? Start with a task, again, that you can measure the returns, and you can also, right, start developing that longer term, longer range vision of where you want to be able to take artificial intelligence. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, understand your options that are in the marketplace. Everybody is certainly aware of OpenAI and ChatGPT, Google and Gemini, right? Anthropic, right? And Claude. These are some of the larger existing generative pre-trained transformers that are on the marketplace today. Many of these companies have one of two options. They have free, right? Free as me. You can certainly just sign up and start using their models for some sort of generative output, but they also have enterprise editions. One of the biggest differences between the two is security, right? So those models are essentially trained on the open internet, essentially the free versions, right? So anything that you put into OpenAI, uh, and you're not paying for that security, for that segmentation, is going to be, all right, essentially public knowledge. You're going to be putting it on the World Wide Web. So you have to be very concerned about, again, sensitive data that may be proprietary to your organization. The other thing is costs, right? Again, generative AI solutions, you have to think of them as a building block, right? That, again, you're going to start out with that task that's going to be a foundation. Understand, right? Or try to get an understanding, right, of what it looks like, a year down the road, 2 years down the road with regards to your consumption of that model, right? A lot of the larger generative pre-trained transformers, as we just went over on the marketplace, seem fairly inexpensive to start. But as your data throughput, right, starts increasing over time, and again, right, the way that the cost formulas work are based on tokens, right? Your output, right, costs you significantly more tokens than your input. And your solution, as it grows, you may find yourself in a position where I've started down the road with one of these models. It's fairly inexpensive. I get to stick my toe in the water. But as you're building out your solution and you're becoming more dependent on your solution, your costs start to skyrocket, right? Very familiar situation to what a lot of people are experiencing in the public clouds today. When they first started making their journey into the public clouds, I don't have that many workloads working there. The egress charges don't seem that great. But as you're moving more and more workloads into the cloud, you find yourself in a situation that your costs are like a runaway train and you can't get out and you can't get out. So just be very careful about what you're selecting today. And that's why the long-term plan is very important, because you could be thinking that you're making a penny-wise decision today, but it ends up being dollar foolish a year or 2 years down the road.
Very, very good advice, that sounds like. Okay, great. So, well, just finally then, to wrap us up, could you just give us one prediction that you have for what artificial intelligence might be able to do for us in 10 years' time?
Wow. 10 years' time, again, we've seen over the past year and a half the explosion in artificial intelligence capabilities. So I don't know if I have the crystal ball to go out 10 years, but certainly I can make predictions, I think, what some of the short-term gains are going to be. Again, we talked a little bit about artificial intelligence, machine learning, generative AI being very task specific. I do think that the next generation of machine learning, artificial intelligence, will be more objective driven, very much like the autonomous car, right? Where you point A and point B, right? Here's my objective. Get me to point B. Don't kill me and try to get me there as quickly as possible, right? So we'll see those common tasks and modeling more around the objective than just performing that task from a short-term perspective. There's also, right, a lot of questions that are going to dictate where artificial intelligence is in 10 years from now. Efficacy, government regulations, right? So we certainly see multiple, let's just say, multiple functions or capabilities under that artificial intelligence umbrella when we start to marry, again, machine learning with robotics. Some pretty, some pretty amazing things that can be accomplished out there as well.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much, John, for sharing your insights and your expertise with us today. It's been great to hear about your leadership journey and your move into the world of AI. and your approach and your considerations for helping organizations to both take control of their cloud costs and optimize their infrastructure solutions, and also just leveraging the power of AI as well. That concludes this episode of the AI Business Leadership Podcast. Keep an eye on our socials for more conversations with leaders in business and AI innovation. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. And we'll see you next time.